Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we're talking tech support with my buddies Jamey and Jake, and also Bryan Jones is going to be with us, and of course Chris Tobin. You're going to find out how to get the most out of tech support. Squeeze them and get everything you need from them on This Week in Radio Tech. TWiRT is brought to you by the Telos Alliance and the new Omnia Volt audio processor. More processing power in one rack unit than others give you in 3. By Lavo, providing seamless integration of your work processes and the uncomplicated operation of complex technology. See Lavo in your future at lavo.com/TWiRT. And by BSW, broadcast supply worldwide, where the remote sale is on now. Save on headsets and remote packages at bswusa.com. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. Delighted to be here, and look who's with me, or look where I am. Can you guess? I'm in the, well, tell me, where am I at? Where am I at, Jake?
You're at Tech Support Central for the Telos Alliance.
There you go. And also, Jake Alderman. Jamey Miller's with us. Hey, Jamey.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm great. We're going to get into a little bit of how you and I met many years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And Jake's a new guy. He's just totally new to this. And, of course, also with us is Chris Tobin. We'll check in with him in a second, but also remoting in from Oregon. Oh, no, Washington. Yeah. Which is it? Bryan Jones is with us.
Brian's from Oregon.
He stepped away to get a water bottle.
Oh, he did. Oh,
yeah.
well,
He felt a little verklempt.
That's right. Okay, I thought he got that done more quickly. Maybe the refrigerator is farther away than I thought. Well, Chris Tobin, come on in. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well, and it looks like a very nice support center you have there. That's in Cleveland.
This is in Cleveland. This is just one corner of it. I mean, you're looking at probably 12% of the room. There's all kinds of tech support people around here. JP is here, but he's about to leave and go play a drum, a set of music at a local establishment. A jazz combo. Okay. Brett is here. David
nice.
Jablonski is here. Mark Manolio is here. I'm surrounded by geniuses who also are good at talking to people on the phone and helping them out. People like me and Chris Tobin. So,
yeah.
Chris, when's the last time you called?
So if I have a question of a Telos One, you have something on the shelf there you could put a Telos One, power it up, and answer my questions.
We got Telos Ones.
We have a couple in the building still, and we're always able to answer stuff based off the manual and walk you through.
All else
just
fails.
having some fun. It's just some fun.
All else
Legacy
fails.
products.
Need to know, Chris.
So what? So on the show. On the show, what we're serious, in all seriousness, we're going to have some fun, but we're also going to talk about, as broadcast engineers, as contract engineers, maybe as just semi-technical people at a radio station, but you're charged with fixing something or getting something to work, or at least determining, can this be fixed, or do I have to send it in to Telos or whatever company you're dealing with? How can you work with any company's support department and get the best experience? How can you get what they need to know in their mind, in their computer, in their lap, and so they can answer your question as quickly as possible and figure out. And a lot of times that's what we're really trying to figure out. Am I going to have to send this in, or do I have a bad cable, or do I need to adjust a knob, a new software version? Do I need to slap it upside the head? What do I need to do? And if it's send it in, I want to get that determined pretty quickly, because a lot of times gear at a broadcast station is critical to the broadcast. So those are some things we're going to be talking about on the show today. Also, well, and all the stuff that relates to just getting the best out of support to get your gear, from a transmitter to a console to a phone system to a codec to an audio processor, to get that back in shape. So that is the topic on today's This Week in Radio Tech, and we have the real experts here who help people every day. Even Bryan Jones does. Did Bryan ever come back? Is he here?
I did come back.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great. I got a glass of water, so I'm ready to go.
Good deal. Well, this is Bryan Jones from the Telos Alliance. A lot of folks know Bryan from previous careers. He's worked at Broadcast Electronics, so he's helped a lot of folks with audio vaults and things like that. So, Bryan, glad you're here, and I'm sure you'll contribute as well to this question of getting the most out of support. Yeah?
Yeah, I'm glad to help. Glad to be here.
All right. Our show, This Week in Radio Tech, we're going to roll right into our first ad so we can have a good long conversation before the middle of the show. Our show is brought to you in part by Omnia and the Omnia Volt audio processor. We've got a quick video about it. Take a look, please.
More top radio stations choose Omnia than all other competing processors combined. Now, meet the Omnia Volt, sharing lineage with Omnia processors like the Omnia 11, electrifying, competitive, market-leading audio in a compact one-rack unit package. With Omnia heritage built in, the Omnia Volt includes Dynamics Magic from Omnia Chief Algorithm Designer Cornelius Gould, including 6 AGC sections from start to finish, deep bass, warmth, and stereo enhancers, 5-band time-aligned limiter, the world's best presets to get you started right, and spectrally pristine final processing designed by Frank Foti. Omnia Volt users love its Quick Tweak feature. Quick Tweak distills years of processing knowledge and proven approaches into simple controls that turn you into a processing pro. Nail your signature sound in minutes using advanced presets or your own settings right from the Volt's front panel or a PC. Omnia Volt brings charisma to your station's audio. FM translators and low-power FM stand out among the crowd. AM stations maximize clarity and coverage. Digital broadcasts sound clear and musical without fatiguing artifacts. Smart design, clearly visible outside and inside. Input and output connections in analog, AES3, Livewire, and multiplex for FM. Automatic input selection handles redundant STLs. Remote control works with today's browsers, tablets, and smartphones. Idealized patch point for external watermarking. And hardened construction to withstand lightning strikes, surges, high RF fields, and harsh conditions.
The new Omnia Volt is stunning. Everyone will know you've got an Omnia on your station.
Omnia Volt is versatile too. DSP Core firmware alters the personality of Volt to fit your changing needs. FM, AM, digital transmission, or studio processing. Volt can even be used as a standalone stereo generator. DSP cores aren't extra cost add-ons. Download the functionality you need for free. The Omnia Volt. Omnia audio processing for any station, and a smart upgrade for aspiring broadcasters. Proven audio processing that'll leave your competitors in the dust.
The Omnia Volt, pretty cool, and thanks a lot to Omnia for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Check them out at telosalliance.com. And click on the Omnia Volt, and you'll see all about it. You can watch that video again if you like. It's been really popular, moving out really quickly. Hey, all right, we're on This Week in Radio Tech, episode 359. With me are Jake Alderman, Jamey Miller, remoting in from his lovely home and office in Washington State is Bryan Jones, and also with us here is Chris Tobin. Chris and I are going to play the customers, and the other guys are going to play the tech support people. So the subject here is how to get the most out of support. You know, what you don't want to do is have a situation where you call support and you have a less than fruitful interaction because maybe you as the caller don't have all your information together. Maybe you're not quite sure even the model number of what you're calling about, or you don't have the serial number handy, or maybe you can't quite describe the failure. You're in a panic because you're off the air. You can't do the talk show that you need to do, or you can't do the football remote, whatever it may be. And the whole idea is for us to help you. And when I say us, I'm talking with people from Telo Support, but Telo Support is not so different from lots of other companies' support. Now, we have 24/7 support here, so that's good. We have email support and telephone support and lots of support resources online. But let's talk first. I want to turn to Jamey Miller first, because Jamey, you're one of the newer guys here, aren't you?
Right.
And you get a lot of the first level support calls.
Right.
Yeah. So from your experience, when people call in, what are some of the things that people do that is helpful or could have done that would be a lot more helpful so that they can get their problem solved?
And you've touched on several of them actually already. We need a serial number. It helps in our tracking of things at this end, but the reality is equipment will go through different versions, and if we can have a serial number determine a date upon which version is being used, it makes it easier to figure things out.
David Jablonski, who's the head of support at the Telos Alliance, and I were talking about this because one of the frustrations that I've had, not only with some Telos gear, but also other manufacturers too, when you tell someone, I need the serial number, and they say, well, I'm looking at the back of the unit, and there's like 4 different numbers back there. One's a MAC address, one, I don't know what the other ones are, but one of them is a serial number, and it may or may not say serial number.
Right.
So, and it's a little bit hard to read. Well, this is your friend.
There you are, exactly.
You know, I'm 55 years old. I got 55-year-old eyes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little hard for me to see these things. But if you take a smartphone in the back of a dark equipment rack, and even if you can't zoom in or get close, even if you can just take a picture that's in focus and then zoom up on that picture when you look at it,
exactly,
you can probably read the serial number.
It's amazing how quickly things start flowing if you can just get us that little bit of information in a legible fashion. And yeah, I was smiling thinking about dark equipment racks and such, you know, getting up behind them and getting around them, and do you have a flashlight, and just all the challenges of getting something that simple, but it can make all the difference in the world, because at a certain serial number, we may have changed software. And here's the previous, here's the current, and we're guessing as to which one we ought to be focusing on.
The other reason is, and I'm sure other companies do this too, but we certainly do at TELUS Alliance, if your unit has had problems before, if we look it up by serial number, hey, you know, back in 2005, you had a similar problem, and we replaced the power supply. You know what? That same power supply has been in there to 2017. Maybe, you know, if the symptoms jibe with power supply, we may already be onto something.
You know, unfortunately, you may be, you know, at the end of a power run, as a for instance, at the end of the voltage run, with the electric utility, and not always the most reliable at times. I've certainly seen it, and you know, the power supply takes all the brunt of things, and maybe that's what's happened again. Yes.
So I want to bring. Well, let's bring Chris Tobin in the conversation. Chris, you're a pretty conscientious engineer, but you've probably forgotten to, you know, have all your ducks in a row before you call support. Talk to me about, you know, how you prepare before you call or email to tech support.
Well, depending on the device, what I've been doing lately, what I do is I write down the model number, serial number. If there is firmware to be found, I verify the firmware versions I have, and then I usually take a snapshot of the device, the front panel and the rear panel. If I can't do the rear panel, definitely do a snapshot of the front panel, and then I send off an email if that's the way it works, and then with a picture. So this way the support desk can get everything in one shot. They can look at it and go, "Oh, wow, that's a black panel. We now have silver. That's definitely 5 years old." And then they don't have to worry about anything else, because then they know where they're starting from. So that's what I do nowadays. I mean, years ago, it was just basically call and ask for help. But if you, as Jamey pointed out, if you do the serial number, model number, firmware, if it's, you know, got software inside, you know, DSPs and whatnot, and a picture, I find that works the best. And the most support folks will usually write back and say, "Thank you for the picture. It helped a lot, and we realize which one you have."
So you mentioned phone call or email, and I was talking to David Jablonski earlier. Let's bring Bryan Jones in on this. Bryan, I hope you're like-minded with David on this. I was asking David, when you contact support at a company, using TELUS Alliance as an example, should you call on that initial contact, or should you email? And David suggested, well, you know what? If you email, it goes to upwards of 11 people at the same time. And if it's a simple question, maybe somebody can, answer you right back. If you call, we got to have somebody who's not on the phone at that moment. So there may be a speed difference in your first reply if you'll email versus if you call. Bryan, what do you think about that?
I agree with you, and that's you're probably not going to find me disagreeing with my boss. That's probably not going to happen, at least not here in front of everybody. Him and I might do that privately, but not in front of the crowd. That's certainly true during during the day. We, like you mentioned, we do offer support 24 hours a day, but we say it's emergency support, but we leave it up to you to sort of determine what's an emergency, right? Because what might be an emergency for one is not for another. And certainly during what I would consider to be normal hours, which are those hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The head office is in Cleveland, so that's where you guys are, where most of the people are, and those 9 to 5 hours are when most of the people are there. So during the day, if you email in, like you said, it goes to, a whole bunch of people. And so you may find that you might get a quicker response than if you called in. But we, right or wrong, if you email us, we assume that that's your preferred method of contact, right? So don't be afraid in the email, even though, you may be emailing, don't be afraid to say, hey, I'd really like somebody to call me, but I'm emailing you to initiate that. So if you want a phone call and you can't talk to somebody directly, send in the email. We'll take a look at that. We'll call you back if that's what you really want. But generally speaking, we try to respond in the method that you contacted us in. So if you email us, we're going to probably email you back first. If you called us on the phone, we're going to try to call you back on the phone.
Hey, let me ask Jake Alderman here. We were talking about smartphones and how easy it is to snap a picture. And Jablonski and I were talking about this, and he said, Kirk, you wouldn't believe how many pictures I take of gear right here to send back to the customer to show them this is what your screen should look like. Talk to me about the value of that.
Yeah, one of the things that I always ask for is we ask for a lot of photos from the customer, but I also send a lot back, especially when you're talking about things like module ID. Let's take the Axia Fusion, for example. So those modules, if you turn them over, there's a small encoder on the back of them.
Little rotary dip switch like.
Yep. And it takes a flathead screwdriver to manipulate, and sometimes customers have a really hard time finding that little thing on the back of the module.
Yeah.
So you go back and forth on the phone, you say, you know what, let me just send you a quick email. I'm going to put a photo in there, and it'll be clear as day where this thing is on the board. They take their module out, they flip it over, they look at it. Oh yeah, that's exactly where it is, because they're pulling a spare off the shelf to put it in service. Someone spilled coffee in the console, and they're ready for that emergency. But then there's that little detail, and that's all I need to help them get that module back on the air. The rest of the console's running, but that one little detail and that photo helps them walk right through that step really quickly.
One of the beauties of email, and hey, audience, don't think for a minute that the tech support engineers don't want to talk to you. If a conversation is required, or if that's the way you want to talk, sure, happy to talk. Just realize that oftentimes we have 11 tech support people on the phone already. And if you email, here's the dirty secret. If you're talking on the phone, you can't talk to somebody else on the phone at the same time, but you can reply to an email if it's simple, right?
If it's simple.
You can do a multitask. Brian, can you multitask? If it's phone and email,
I can multitask. Indeed.
But you can't talk to two different customers on the phone at the same time, can you?
No, not.
Yeah.
As soon as I can figure that out, I'm going to quit this job and go be rich. So.
Yeah. Brian, there was I'm sorry, it's slipping my mind right now. Of course, my notes are over on a desk over there. There was a topic, Brian, that you kind of wanted to hit on a little bit. What was that? You remember we talked earlier?
Was that the one? Was that the one we talked about where I say this a lot, and I don't. This is not intended to be put out in a bad way, but sometimes we are not able to help customers like we might want to, and I always say we suffer from the fact that we answer the phone a lot of the time.
Oh yeah.
Is that the conversation that you were talking about?
So this is right. I'll set this up and have you expound on it. So often people, the engineers or other technical people or even semi-technical people at a broadcast facility are trying to get a piece of gear that Telos, Omnia, Axia, 25/7 linear acoustic makes, and get that to interface with something else. Because so many people, equipment has to talk to other equipment. And most of us have audio down, right? Whether it's analog or AES and even Livewire, we got that down pretty well. But there are other things that the equipment has to talk to each other, often GPIO or maybe some kind of serial connection. And customers call us asking, well, Brian, I'll let you take it from here. I want to connect my Telos to something else, and what happens?
Yeah, well, that happens. I mean, if you think about the gear that we make, almost all of it interfaces to something else, right? Very little of it, if any of it, even does anything on its own. That's everything from the Telos 100, the first hybrids that we built, all the way up to the Omnia Volt, right? I mean, those are all intended to interface with something else, and so we'll get a lot of questions where, let's take a Zip 1 for example. Somebody will call up and they'll say, "Hey, I want to connect my Telos 1, or my Telos 1. I'm sorry, my Telos, my Zip 1 to a Tie-Line Merlin or something of that nature," and oftentimes I'll ask, Have you spoken to Tie-Line, right? Do you have any information from them? And this is no commentary about anybody else's support, but a lot of times they'll say, well, I tried to call them, but they didn't answer the phone, or they only have email support, or they don't offer, after hours support. So we suffer a little from the fact that we that we answer the phone. And that's what I mean by that, is that the reason why we get those questions about interfacing to everything else is because we pick up the phone. But that's also one of the reasons why, a lot of people say, hey, we love your support, because even if it's not our product, we're going to try very hard to help you interface to that product. I think I told you this morning, Kirk, that if anybody calls in and wants to interface their Axia console to an Audio Vault automation system, I'm the guy that gets those calls. But that's because I worked for broadcast electronics for 10 years doing Audio Vault support. So I understand both sides of that. But it can be frustrating for us and for the customer, because they'll call in and they'll ask me, hey, I want to interface my remote control from my console to my EncoDAD system or to my wide orbit automation system. How do I do that? Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not an expert on the Enco stuff, so I don't know how to do that. And a lot of times that can be frustrating for the customer, right? Because the customer will have called Enco and said, hey, how do I hook up my GPIO to my Enco system? And Enco will say, oh, we don't know, call Axia. That sounds like an Axia question. So there's this whole he said, she said sort of thing. So
yeah,
that can be frustrating.
Yeah. So we also discussed, though, about, let's say I do call you and, hey, I got an Axia system. I want to remote control. I have a console. An AOIP console. So all the contact closures are not physical unless you bring them out. They're maybe over Ethernet, right? And and I want to hook it to an Enco. You don't know anything about an Enco. You're not really expected to. But so my next call is going to be to Enco. Hey, I've got an Axia. Now, I think, though, that there may be some information that you as a tech support guy from Axia could remind me or let me have easily at hand. So when I call the Enco guys, I'll say, hey, I've got an audio console. It has this IP address, and I've got these GPIO channels on these faders that need to turn something on. Can you help me take that information and plug it in the right places in Enco? That sounds to me like the best way to move forward on a question like that.
Yeah, and that's right. And in a lot of cases, we have tools that allow us to have really easy access to the computer that you're looking at to control your system. It's go to assist session. It doesn't require the installation of any special software. You go to a web page, we give you a key, and we're looking at your computer. And one of the things that we can do is we can sort of show you on your computer what happens when you turn on that channel on the console. If I'm automation X, whatever that is, what should I be looking for? And we can show you that. Say, hey, look, if you use this tool and you look at the GPIO that's associated with the driver that's got your channels on the console. Here's what you see how this happens when you turn the channel on, and this happens when you turn the channel off. That's what Enco is going to need to be looking for. And in a lot of cases, the customer will go, I think I saw something in their software where you might set that up, right? So a lot of times it's knowing the right questions to ask as well, but we certainly don't mind, sitting on a call with you while you look through your automation system software, and if we can help you, we will. We really try, to help with all aspects of support, even if it's not our product, But just as a customer, just know that some of us are experts on certain products just because of our life experiences. But it can be frustrating as a customer look, I got a million things I got to do today, Kirk, and I don't have all day to spend trying to get this silly, remote start hooked up. Can you just take care of it for me? So just understand that while we're experts on our stuff, we might not be experts on the automation system, but we will try to help you where we can. And I'm certainly always willing to be on a call, with you and your, whatever product you're trying to interface to, so we can sort of get it all worked out.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, you're watching This Week in Radio Tech, or listening if you're partaking of the audio-only version. I'm Kirk Harnack, along with Chris Tobin, who, Chris, I failed to ask you, are you in your usual haunt in New Jersey today?
Yes, I am. Yes, I'm in a voice booth today.
Aha.
In New
That's why it
Jersey.
sounds so good in there, huh?
Oh yes, it's a very small booth. So
but you won't be playing the organ today for us, will you?
No, we had the Steinway out though. We did an interview with Barry Harris. So the Steinway was out and tuned, and we had a good time.
Oh
so
I wish I had a Steinway as opposed to a Henway.
What's a Henway?
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
About 8 pounds.
Steinway's about 60 pounds.
So Chris, one of the things that we try to manage as individuals in all of our relationships, including a relationship to tech support, is managing our expectations. Chris, as a customer, can you kind of overview for me what are your expectations of the answers and service you'll receive when you talk to somebody from tech support at any company, not just Telos? What are your own expectations?
My expectation, and Bryan pointed it out, would be if I'm calling, say, a transmitter manufacturer or console or studio or remote equipment, is knowledge of their products, just right off the bat. I mean, I can't tell you the number of times I've called certain manufacturers and spoke to someone in tech support who knows where they are in the company and asked a simple question that I'm just trying to figure out because their tech manual is written so poorly. I'm like, okay, I believe this is a pull-up resistor requirement, but I can't make out your nomenclature. And then the person on the other end is literally like, well, I'm not really sure about that. And then my expectation is, wow, I now have somebody at the company who's not familiar with what I'm asking, but they're in tech support. I start to not panic, but I become concerned. Thankfully, I'm not off the air, so I'm not panicking there. My expectation is if I'm calling support, and I can at least say there are several companies I've called on many occasions, and they've been very, very good. And then Telos is one of them, Telos Alliance, and very knowledgeable. But that's the part I look for. Know your stuff, know your product, and be honest and say, look, our product does work with that other manufacturer's device or that console or that remote gear or transmitter, but we don't have experience with it because it's a changing element, and you need to contact the right people. I'd rather have tech support say that to me than just simply try thumbing through. This is what I hear sometimes on the other side of I hear papers going. I'm like, this can't be good.
Yeah.
And I know Bryan and the others
looking
know
for the page in the manual.
Yes, I have had people do that. I'm like, no, you don't get it. Because when I worked at 2 other networks, and I used to be the tech support guy for several hundred affiliates, it's like, no, they don't want to hear that. They want to know positive. This is it. Here's how you do it. Yes, that satellite receiver does not store what you need at this time, but the feature will come somewhere in the future. And that's what I expect, just the knowledge of your products.
Gotcha. Hey, I was actually just looking up here an email. I'm going to try to take care of that in a minute. Jake, a little while ago, I was watching you on a tech support call, and you didn't necessarily know all the answers to what the customer was asking, and you were pinging other people you asked me a question.
Yeah.
Because I happened to be here.
Yeah. I mean, it's when Kirk's sitting there, and Kirk's been here since we had the Zephyr IP and the Zip 1 and the Zephyr Extreme, and you've got 16, 17 years of knowledge you've been with the company.
Well, I'm not sure I've got knowledge every year, but yeah, I've been here that long.
But you've got company knowledge sitting right behind you. That's a resource. To Chris's point, we sometimes seem like we sit on this end of the phone with all the answers, but that's because you spend a lot of time cultivating a lot of quick access documents, quick reference sheets, stuff you can go find. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard people say, is it raining in Cleveland because I have a mechanical keyboard? And I'm like, nope, that's just my keyboard chattering away because I'm currently searching for a document on my desktop that I've got that references all the GPIO pinouts for Axia. There's so much you can commit to memory, but there's so much that you have to just know, I put this here. I have to go grab that and look at it while I look at it with you to get you through this situation. And that was something actually when I got here, I was a customer of Axia since 2012.
Okay.
And I actually dealt with both Bryan and Jeff as a customer and then came here to work alongside him. And Bryan was the one who turned me on to that. He's like, you don't have to have the answer instantly. You do have to know a lot, but you don't have to have everything instantly. But if you have a good reference system, stuff that you can go grab quickly, so that while maybe it's not perfectly, you are thumbing for something. You're not thumbing through the whole book to try and find what you're looking for. And that customer who I was working with it was an IP codec versus a couple other things that he was trying to interface it with. I was like, I asked, had you talked to the opposing manufacturer? well, this product, while it offers this feature, was developed at this generation. This was developed at this generation. And those two things don't necessarily talk unless you get these specific compatibility settings right. Can I follow up with you via email? Because I need to go check before I say with absolute certainty, because I would prefer, if I were sitting on the other end of the phone, to get the right answer than the fast answer. And that's the thing that it comes to managing expectations for. Sometimes you do need to give the fast answer when it's a console and it's down and the customer's off the air. That you need to have really fast. But at the end of the day, accurate information trumps quick information.
Sure. I don't want to have to call you back because you gave me something wrong. Yeah.
When I was a field engineer, there were 2 A's I lived by: accuracy and accessibility. My data had to be accurate and it had to be accessible. Those were the 2 things I always lived by.
Good deal. Hey, in the next half hour, I'm going to want to hear some kind of a war story. We have to probably, cleanse the names from it, but I want to hear some kind of oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe this problem, but we worked through it, that kind of thing. And coming up, I want to ask Jamey after the break here about the subject of swaps and emergency loaners, and how that can work at a company like Telos, and maybe your experience with other companies and how that can work too. And what can a customer say to you to maybe increase his chances of getting a loaner, if it's available? So that I want to get those questions answered coming up. Also, we're going to talk about how what other resources you have besides tech support to get a question answered, and should you use them first, or should you use them second, or just what should you do? So questions like that are coming up. This Week in Radio Tech, episode 359, How to Get the Most from Tech Support, is brought to you by our friends at Lavo, LAWO.com. And if you'll punch into your web browser, lavo.com/TWiRT. That's LAWO.com/TWiRT. It'll take you right to the page at Lavo where they talk about their radio products. Things like radio consoles that are designed to support you or your talent in the creation, preparation, and broadcasting of your radio programs. Really quick, efficient, intuitive workflows guaranteed. Also, virtual radio. Now, this is a product we talked about for quite a while. The Crystal Clear is a product, an audio console where the DSP engine sits back in a rack. All the I/O goes to it, but the console interface that the talent or disc jockey or operator is using is on a touchscreen, a multi-touch touchscreen with controls that are designed for human touch, for the human finger. So you're not trying to, use something that was kind of squeezed onto a screen. You're using a console that was designed for a screen. Plus, the folks at Lavo have this system called Relay. Now, that's virtual radio. That's where you get everything that you might need to run a broadcast remote, a radio station, a mixed talk show, all in essentially, it's running in a PC-type environment. There's a CPU that's controlling everything, and it's just slick as can be. Check that out. And the new Ruby console is something that Lavo introduced recently. The Ruby console is a new way of thinking about radio workflow. That's where physical and on-screen multi-touch controls combine to give your on-air talent a really new way to create a lot of flexibility and a whole lot of power for operators that can handle it. So Lavo is in some really big places. You may have heard of their big consoles that they have at live event venues or at the Olympics. Wherever the Olympics may be, you'll probably find a Lavo console there doing a lot of big master control and production duties. You'll also find Lavo consoles at the BBC, at the CBC in Toronto, Canada, and at NPR in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Really a great selection of consoles, and the newest technology in terms of audio over IP, AES-67 included, and Ravenna as well in their routing systems. Just a lot of cool stuff and a lot of cool controls too, with customizable software, user interfaces that are customizable that let you have a lot of both flexibility and power. So check it out. Go to the website Lavo, LAWO.com, and put a /TWiRT, TWiRT, on that, and that'll take you right to the radio products page, and they will know that you visited because of This Week in Radio Tech. Thanks a lot to Lavo for sponsoring our show, This Week in Radio Tech. All right, you're watching or listening to a show about tech support and how to get the best out of it. And, with some companies, you don't look forward to calling tech support. I mean, do you really want to call tech support at your cable company? Do you really want to do that? Probably not, because they're going to run you through a pre-scripted stuff that, Oh man, it's just yes. Look, I'm an advanced user. I don't need to know. Is the power on? I've already checked the power's on. I'm going to reset your modem. No. I've got the modem. I'm going to reset your router. No, I've got port forwards in there. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So when you call a company like Telos and talk to one of these guys or Bryan Jones, do you guys have any scripts that you go by?
Hi, my name's Jake.
Yeah, how about you? You got a script?
No.
So when they call with a HX1 problem, you don't bring up the HX1 script?
Not at all. I've done a lot of communicating, teaching things before my time at Telos, and the thing that I stress the most to people I'm interacting with is sincerity.
Yeah.
And a pre-scripted speech is going to destroy all that. I mean, people pick up on it instantly.
Yeah.
And we're not here, I mean, that may work well when you're trying to sell whatever it is that you're calling an 800 number for, but we're not here to sell anything. We're here to, when we're selling ourselves, but we're here to support. And we need to convey that in our voice, and that's not going to happen if something is set up, lined up, and ready to go, and they say this, then say this, and say this. So, yeah, no, there's not a script to be found around here.
It's my understanding that in some cases, Telos can still service products that are 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
The original Telos 10 hybrid. If whatever's wrong with it is a part that we still have,
right,
then we can fix it for you. All the way up to products that we just shipped out the door yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe despite the testing we do, you might have an infant mortality kind of problem.
Right.
But let me ask you this: what might a customer expect? Let's say he's got a piece of equipment that is fairly critical to him. He knows the repair is going to take a while. What should the customer expect in terms of a loaner or something that they can use for a while their product's getting repaired?
We do have a wide and varied and quite open loaner program. Loaner / rental, to be fair. If something's within the 5-year warranty, it's free of charge to loan to them.
Mm-hmm.
If it's outside of that warranty, we've got what I consider a very reasonable fee, with frankly no time limit on it.
Yeah.
We're not looking at somebody and saying, well, you've got until the end of the month to make all this happen. It's like, no, things happen. Recognizing radio is a world of contract engineering so much. Sometimes the contract engineer doesn't show up for 3 or 4 days or however long. The equipment sits there. We're comfortable with that. The only thing we do ask in our loaner dispensation is that once you get your repaired unit back, get the loaner back to us as quickly as you can, because somebody else may need it.
Like a library book. You're done reading it.
Exactly, yeah.
Take it back to the library.
That's what's driving 90% of it. When I'm making follow-up calls to ask if somebody could send a loaner back to us, it's because we may need it for somebody else.
Yeah.
It worked for you. Spread, pay forward, if you will. Help the next person down the line.
What's do we have a loaner for every piece of gear that we have, or what are the most popular things that we got to set that loaner out?
Man, it seems like we do. We have HX6s, HX1s and 2s on the telephone side of things. We have Radius and IQ8 little consoles to send out to folks. We've got Omni 11s, 9s, 1s. I'm sure we're going to have the Volts, for that lightning shot or whatever the case may be. Zephyr Extremes. I'm just kind of visualizing our shelf here. And even individual modules for the Element and Fusion lines of consoles. A lot of stuff back here.
Wow. Okay. Bryan Jones, you're still with us, right?
I am.
Good deal. Bryan, I wonder if you might give some of your thoughts on an audio console, and you deal a lot with Axia gear yourself. You deal some with networking, I suppose, as does your partner in crime, Jeff McGinley, up in your part of the world.
That's right.
What would it? I know I'm not making a tech support call to you right now, but what are some common problems and their solutions? Is there anything that rises above other stuff that here's another customer that has this problem. Let me help them out because I know exactly what to do.
There isn't really any one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there isn't really any one thing that sticks out, any more than the rest. So typically the Axia. So as you alluded to, my area of expertise is really in the Axia stuff. If you call me with, a hard question on Omnia processing, that's not really my forte. That's a Mark Manolio thing. We sort of have everybody that are experts. So being sort of the resident expert, my title says senior support engineer, which is not a commentary about age as much as as it is about.
That's what they told you, huh?
What's that?
That's what they told you, huh? That it wasn't a commentary about age. Yeah,
that's right. That's discriminatory, I think. So maybe
that's right.
Maybe that's why they don't come right out and say it.
I should keep my day job, not try to be funny. Go ahead.
So the so being that I deal mostly with with Axia stuff, I see a lot of things come through, and then a lot of them are similar. So really, what we see on the Axia side, mostly are a lot of configuration questions. We deal with a lot of those, and so to that end, a lot of those are very similar. Right? Somebody will call in, how do I do this, or how should I make it do this? And we're able to sort of, go back through the ways that we've helped other customers sort of achieve the same thing, right? So, well, okay, you're wanting to do this, here's the way we've seen this done in the past. And the other, probably the most common thing that we see on the Axia side is, it used to be in the audio console world, I could go grab my butt set or my headphones with my clip leads on it, and I could listen to where some problem was happening. But in a network-centric world, that's difficult to do. So a lot of times, what we're dealing with are making sure that your network is stable, and that that you don't plug things into your network that don't belong there, and that if you we see in a lot of cases where somebody will need to add I need to add another computer to my Axia network, so I'm just going to go grab this little $29 Linksys switch off the shelf and plug it in, and all of a sudden we start having problems. And so we see a little bit of that stuff, but I wouldn't say that there's any one problem that we see. If you have to make me pick a problem, I'm going to say it's going to be network related. Making sure that your network is stable and configured properly, and that we obey some quality of service standards, and the rest of it's all configuration. Some of it gets to be pretty advanced.
I'm reflecting back on personal stuff. This was not here at Telos. This was many a moon ago. But at one point in time, I spent several years selling radio station stuff myself with one of the major suppliers and distributors, and I was just the one day that happened to take a phone call, and a customer asked me for a price on something, so I gave him the price and just moved on, because that happened all the time. A few minutes later, the same person calls back, I answer the phone, and I don't know if he asked for me or I was just available or whatever, but literally just a few minutes later, he calls again, and thankfully, I had the good sense to ask this guy, what are you up to? Because you called me for 3 pieces of equipment now. Well, we're getting ready to build a brand new facility in a major market. And again, I'm not going to mention names out of deference to this person. And I thought, well, I bet we can help you with just about every single piece of that equipment. And so I proceeded to engage him, talk some more. He sent me a list. I actually went to NAB and met with him to finalize the list and such. And it ended up being about a $400,000 order, equipment-wise, of a variety of things, because we are a distributor. And it was just an opportunity. And thank goodness, I'm not patting myself on the back. I just had thankfully the good sense to ask, but ask those kind of questions. Chris was kind of getting at that. Sales and support they're just like this with each other. And if you see an opportunity, if something crosses your mind, don't be afraid to ask. Show interest in what this person is doing, because you build relationships that way. And frankly, that's what I want to see here, particularly for myself, and and hopefully spread that approach to others. I don't really care for email. You really want to know the truth?
Yeah, you got to talk to somebody.
Yeah, I want to be on the phone with somebody. But I get why email is necessary. I mean, you're out at a transmitter site. It's a great way to send information and such. But given my preference, I would rather talk to somebody than exchange texts or emails with them.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, then I'd rather talk to you than somebody who doesn't want to talk to me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's typically how it works around here.
Jake, you might have a teachable moment story yourself.
Yeah. So, a couple weeks ago, I took a call for a customer. It was specifically for Axia, and the guy had just called and he's like, "Yeah, so I got all my gear and it's all. I just took it all out of the box, and I'm really excited, to see everything going." I'm like, okay. He's like, and I put IPs and everything, and here's everything I did, and I'm like, great. And he's like, and I put and it was a channel numbering issue, and he put the same channel and a bunch of stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, that's why no audio is moving, because you have the same multicast channel duplicated in multiple places, and it's the same thing over and over again. So nothing's going to be able to subscribe properly on the network. And I asked him, like, so what's your background? Just politely ask, because sometimes the best piece of information for us is to know where you come from. And he's like,
yeah.
And he told me he's a guy little younger than I am, who it's a small community radio station. And I was like, okay, that calibration of my expectations just set the tone for the conversation. And I think, Bryan can agree with me on this, and Jamey probably can as well. That is really helpful information for us to know whom we're speaking with. And there's no reason you have to feel when you call us that you can't supply that. Because once you tell me that, oh, I'm new to Livewire. Okay, so here's some Livewire 101 basics. IPs, channel numbers, a good schema to use for that, how to lay that out in your facility, how to do this. We put blog posts and white papers and all that stuff out on the website, for reasons. There's a good one up there. On IP radios.
Yeah, I want to say last winter, we put up a new blog post. Jeff McGinley wrote it. I did a little editing on it.
Yeah.
About how to come up with an IP numbering scheme. And of course, I'm sorry to interrupt, but with Livewire or any computer network, you can come up with any scheme you want to. But if it's really random and you don't know what you're doing, there's a chance you might do it in a way that just isn't going to work.
And actually, to your exact reference, I sent that blog post to this customer and said, give this a read, and then let's have a further conversation about getting your system, running. Because that is some of those basics, telling me your user level helps me help you. And that's ultimately what I'm here to do. It's when we're flying blind, I got a guy who's never touched something or put an IP address in it. And he goes, what's an IP address? And I've spent 5 minutes talking about stuff that you needed to know what that was.
Yeah.
Now you're frustrated because you're not getting useful information. And I have to go back to get to where I was going.
Sure. So that's a great example of letting the customers, whatever company you're dealing with, if you look, hey, now, what if somebody tells you that inaccurate information, like, well, I really know what I'm doing here, blah, 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 blah.
There's certain phrases that you can throw out, and I can go, okay, that the detector just went off. I know your level versus what's going on here. You just learn to listen to what a customer's really saying, to what the message they're really conveying is. And so they might tell you that, I've got this much experience, I've got these accredited, certs that say I'm qualified to say these things. And then you just listen to a litany of, jargon and stuff spit out of their mouth. And you're like, that doesn't add up to X plus Y does not equal Z.
Yeah.
I can now calibrate your knowledge myself a little bit.
And I guess when you call or talk to tech support at any company, what you really want to do is get a great communication channel going. And you don't do that by pretending to be somebody that you're not. So if I call somebody and I really don't know what I'm doing, but I need some help, say, look, I've only got a short bit of experience with this, and I can turn the thing on. But beyond that, I'm a little bit lost. And they're going to talk to you in a much different way than if you come on strong and act like you know what you're doing and this darn thing doesn't work. Right? That's just not going to move the conversation. And that's probably what, while we were gone, I think Bryan Jones was alluding to that kind of attitude as well. Bryan, is there any afterthought or anything you'd like to add to that attitudinal thing when you call tech support? How to get the best from them?
No, I think that touches on it. I mean, attitude is, and that goes for, Jake and Jamey and I too. Our attitude is everything. And ultimately determines what your experience is as an end user, right? If my attitude is crappy and I treat you as if you're, dumb or stupid, or why would you do that? Your experience walking away is not going to be very good, right? So understanding where the customer comes from, sometimes we have to ask some questions that, are not intended to make anybody feel dumb. Right. It's just so that we know how best to help you and kind of where you're coming from. Because I don't want to talk. Kirk, you and I talked about this today, right? Talking about IP phones, right? I wouldn't treat you with regard to an IP phone the same way that I would treat, somebody who'd never picked up an IP phone before or didn't know how to configure it. So a lot of times we'll ask a lot of questions that might seem dumb or might seem belittling, but we're really just trying to find out, the best way to help you.
Yeah. It's really a whole interesting subject. I mean, if you met somebody at a cocktail party, right, and you don't know this person, but that person has information you want, and to get that, you've got to give information. It takes a few minutes to get that rapport going, to both of you to figure out, oh, here's what that person knows. Here's how I can talk about that. And that goes both ways. And so you want to establish a quick relationship. Sure, we're talking about equipment, but we're also talking about the ability to relate what's wrong with it, or how you may have it hooked up, right or wrong. And it's, yeah, go ahead.
One way to really frustrate yourself as a customer, and I've had customers who have called back and been angry with me about this, is when, and Bryan, I think, has seen it because he's taught me a lot of what I know since I got here, especially on some certain products that we work together on, is to not be honest. When I say something and you don't know it, ask again, because you've already got my attention once, whether it's an email or by phone or whatever. Don't say, yeah, I got it, and go, okay, I got it, and then move on, and then call me 2 hours later and say, hey, I still don't have this fixed, or this isn't still working right. Yeah. Because then you're going to call back. I'm going to have moved on to something else and be unavailable and not call you back for an hour because I'm chasing, I've moved on to the next customer who needs the same time and attention I just gave you. And then you're upset because you've wasted half the day trying to get one thing fixed. Bryan's perfect example, the fader start. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, what didn't you understand? I call you back and we're going through the same conversation. I go, well, did something not click the first time? Because if it doesn't click the first time, just ask me then, because it's a lot faster for me to explain it right then again and go backwards. I have no problem saying something 2 or 3 times to make sure you really understand it and make sure that I'm conveying that message clearly. That's the open communication channel that has to happen between someone on the other end of the phone or the other end of the keyboard and us.
It sounds like what we're all saying here is that to make that transaction work well and get the best, we want to be honest with each other. Customer and tech support people, be honest with each other about what you may know, where you're starting with this, what's wrong, what you think is wrong. Help me out here, and there's no braggadocio, machismo is not going to help get your problem solved. And yet that's the first place that a lot of people, including me sometimes, go to when we're talking to tech support.
Nor is a program director or general manager leaning on the back of the engineer helping either, but we know that's in play also. There isn't any easy, quick answers to this stuff. The technical knowledge is probably easier to acquire than it is the interaction with a person. One person calls up and, hey, I need a little bit of help, and another person is just in a panic. Flop sweats and all, because they are off the air and they are losing money. And again, I've got a general manager right behind me here, and it's like, well, talking about teachable moments earlier, a little bit of a flashback here. I like to tell this story because it was just, frankly, it was a nice compliment to me. You really want to know the truth. One of my radio station experiences was out on a remote using Telos ISDN equipment, actually, and the call dropped out. And so I'm there for insurance. The talent comes over and says, hey, we lost our connection. Okay, so I get up, and frankly, all I had to do was just dial it back up again. And the DJ says to me, I really like working with you because you never get rattled. And I said, well, I appreciate that thought, but there's 2 reasons for that. First of all, if I get all hinked up, I can't think. So I have to have that calmness to figure out what's going on here. But the other side of it is, though, honestly here, this is only radio station stuff. We're not heart surgeons here. I will bend over backwards to help you in any way I possibly can, but take a breath, because you can't think and you need to keep it in perspective. And with those thoughts in mind, we'll get you taken care of. May take, depending upon the situation, it may take a while, but we will get you taken care of.
Good point. It's not. Is anybody going to die if we don't fix this in 5 minutes?
There you go. Exactly.
And my wife has worked at hospitals. They even ask that at hospitals. When they have an IT problem at the hospital, is anybody going to die? And if the answer is yes, okay, then all hands on deck. But if the answer is no, then okay, let's work the problem. Mm-hmm. Hey, our show This Week in Radio Tech, episode 359, we're talking about how to get the most out of tech support. We've got just a couple minutes left after our last sponsor message. And when we come back, Chris Tobin is a reliable guy. He's got a tip of the week for us, but I'm also going to see if Bryan Jones has a little tip of the week for us as well. He can probably come up with something. So stay tuned for that. Hang on through the break. Our show is brought to you in part by our friends at Broadcast Supply Worldwide. Now, their website, it's a great website too. Probably it may be the best broadcast equipment website on the planet. It's bswusa.com. And right now, for the last month, they've been having this remote sale because we're getting ready for the high school football season, the whole sports seasons at high schools and colleges. That drives a lot of remotes. Well, they're having their annual sale on that in July and in August as well. So it's not too late. You're going to hear me talking about that for the next couple of shows. You can save up to $1,450 on new remote sale specials from Comrex, from Icreso, HDV Mixer, Sennheiser, Shure, Yellowtech, and more. In fact, they've got the new codec. You can pre-order the new improved Comrex Access NX. It's at an introductory price, and they will include the exact same headphones that I'm wearing right now. It's the Audio-Technica BPHS-1 headset. Love these things. And they'll give that to you for free when the Comrex Access NX ships. It's a portable codec, faster processors, more powerful error correction, and a handy touch screen. So you can pre-order that right now. The next thing is this HDV mixer. This is exclusive. You can't get this from anybody else. Only from BSWUSA.com. It lets you put video of your remote broadcast, your football games, your basketball games, in the spring, your baseball games, to put these on your web stream. And, with high school sports, it shouldn't be too hard to get the broadcast or the streaming rights to those. I wouldn't do that if it's a college game right away. But this lets you have a couple of cameras or more if you want to buy a bigger package, and a laptop computer that's included with it, so you can stream the video. Of course, use your play-by-play audio that you're using anyway, that you're broadcasting. So check that out, the HDV mixer. Not this headset, another headset, Shure's BRH50M. There you combine lightweight comfort with superb audio quality. It's got a high-performance focused cardioid microphone, clear natural voice, and of course it rejects lots of noise too. It's on sale. It is really a top-of-the-line headset. It's on sale for $399. Icreso transmitters are on sale. They come with 5-band audio processing built in, and they have a really innovative and highly reliable design for low, medium, or high power transmission. That's Icreso transmitters there. And I want to mention, one more thing. They have this dual internet radio pack. You can save $350 on their dual internet radio package. You get essential gear for smooth webcasting with a guest or partner, including 2 MXL mics, 2 pair of Audio-Technica headphones, a PreSonus mixer with Mix Minus for phone calls, and a whole lot more. Check that out. That whole package is under $700. And you know what? When you order from BSWUSA.com, one of the really cool things is they have almost all of this gear is in stock at their Ohio warehouse. It's in the same state we're in right now. And it's right next to an airport. And that airport it's a big UPS facility. So bottom line is you order by 7 p.m. Eastern time, and chances are extremely good it can go out that night, and you can have it the next day if you pay for next day shipping. So if you're like me, you forgot something, you need it right away. I had to order a small equipment rack one time, and I needed it the next day so I could get the stuff mounted and go home. And BSW had it for me. I mean, the next morning it was there, and we got the job done and got to go home and see the family. So that's one thing that BSW does for you. They built that. They have that warehouse. They are next to UPS for that reason, so they can serve you better and win your business. BSWUSA.com. Thanks a lot, BSW, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, quickly, Chris Tobin, do you have a tip of the week for us, please?
Sure. This week, let's see, I just actually enjoyed finding out that I had done this earlier in a facility I helped wire up a year or two ago. Please remember, it's important nowadays, cable numbering. And I don't mean just a LAN cable between a console and an engine. I'm talking about power cables from your monitor. This little monitor that's on my table here. Put a number at the top where the monitor is, and at the other end, whether you plug into the outlet, put a number. I was doing a broadcast over the weekend with a friend, and he asked me to unplug the mixer, not a mixer, a USB something device. I forget what they called it. And I said, okay, how do we know which one it is? He goes, well, just follow the wire. He goes and tries to follow the wire. It falls out of the mixer, not the one he wanted. The entire thing went out. So number it and do it right. Don't take a number and slap it on there and then have it peel off halfway. Do put some little tape around it, make sure it's on there well. Trust me, it'll pay off, because the place I was doing some work recently, I went to unplug something, and sure enough, on the power strip beneath the counter, all the plugs had numbers, and I was like, oh, look at that. Number 17, went back up to the top of the 17 is the monitor. Thank you very much. We will not take us off the air. And it worked just fine. And the guy I work with goes, how did you know which cable to pull out? That rack is full of, it's a bundle. I said, I showed him the number. So just simple. It's simple. Number your cables. It's worth it. It's worth the time and trouble in the beginning, and go.
Yep. Chris, I've never been a believer in that, and you have just convinced me. Good job, sir. Brian,
It works.
Really, I'm not a cable numbering guy. I mean, if I can see both ends of the cable, I'm not likely to number it. But you just point out where stuff goes through a hole, through a rack, gets tied in with other cables.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. I'm a bad engineer. Such a bad engineer. Bryan Jones, do you have a tip of the week for us, please?
Yeah. So my tip of the week is maybe a little more obtuse than that. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want on your support call. If you're not getting what you need from the person that's helping you, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to just come right out and ask. Chris and I were sort of talking about this while you guys were offline. If it sounds a little bit like somebody's reading from that script and that's not what you're asking for, please just please remember we're here to help you, and don't be afraid to ask for what you want.
And like if the person's not really helping you ask for somebody else, or what are you kind of driving at here?
Yeah, so Jake sort of alluded to that, is that sometimes Jake and I'll be talking about something and there's this pause, from Jake, or even from some customers, that I take that pause to mean you're not really picking up what I'm putting down, right? So I may be giving you right information, but I'm not giving it to you in a way that you understand it, right? So if you're not getting it, don't be afraid to say, hey, is there any? I'm not going to be offended if I can't help you. My goal is to help you get, This is taking me back to my childhood days. My dad, he always used to make me listen to motivational speaker tapes. And one of the things that I always remember, this might be like a Zig Ziglar, is that you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get everything in life they want.
Sure.
Right? So
yeah.
If I'm not giving you what you want, and you want to have something presented in a different manner, don't be afraid to ask. You're not going to offend me by saying, hey, I'm not getting it. Is there somebody else that I could talk to?
A second opinion, if you will.
Yeah. Right, Brian. I know what you're talking about now. It makes perfect sense, and I'm glad that you, as a tech support guy, are listening to the reaction of who you're talking to, and you can tell again by that kind of pause that their wheels are spinning, but they may not all be engaged yet. So good.
Two ears, one mouth. Right,
guys, we got to go. We're past our time. Suncast, I probably have to go to the bathroom or something. So we got to go. Our show this week in Radio Tech has been about how to get the most from support. Bryan Jones, thank you so much for joining us from your home up in the Northwest. I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. It's 103 degrees here today, and we're probably going to eke another couple other degrees out before we're done.
That's not why you moved to Washington State. Good golly.
You're right. It's not.
Chris Tobin from New Jersey. Thank you for being with us, buddy. I appreciate it so much.
No, you're welcome. Anytime. Brian, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you, Chris.
And I want to thank my cohorts here. We have Jamey Miller and Jake Alderman at the Telos Alliance, which is where I'm at. We're in the support what do you call this room? The support room? Support office? Support office. Okay. I thought you might have a cave name for
No,
something.
sorry.
All right. Thanks a lot to Suncast, our producer, for fixing the problems and getting us going again. And thanks to Andrew Zarian as well, the founder of the GFQ Network. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.